The three biggest plastic producers in the hospital is actually, number one, gloves, number two, aprons, and number three is the waste containers. So if we just could start to do what we can on those three, we will actually reduce major reduction in the usage of plastic. Bottom line story is really that the solutions are available and it's just time to implement and start to deliver.
Hello and welcome to the Sustainable Healthcare Podcast. Today I'm recording from home and I'm lucky enough to have Henrik with me, who is going to present to us a product called WoodSafe that is a disposable bucket for medicinal waste. But briefly about the Sustainable Healthcare Podcast, this is the show where we introduce you to tools and tactics from the healthcare industry on how to go about decarbonizing the healthcare industry. If the healthcare sector was a country, it would be emitting 4 to 5% of all of the global emissions and thereby be the fifth largest country measured on emissions. So that is quite a lot. There's a lot of areas where we need to reduce our emissions, and one of those areas is the incineration of medicinal waste. And that is why we have Henrik with us in the studio. Henrik, first of all, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for inviting me. Happy to be here.
And I was really intrigued about the pitch that I got because you were actually booked on the show through my colleague Joachim. And Joachim said, Henrik is working with bioplastics and you know a lot about that, which I hope will be true as well. And you can ask all of those technical questions about the bioplastics and I think you'll find it really interesting. So, when I first heard about it, I found it quite intriguing. But for our listeners that haven't gotten the pre-story, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about WoodSafe?
Yes, of course. First of all, just starting to explain the bioplastics, and it's a lot of educational information. Bioplastic is the WoodSafe product is actually biocomposite, so it's a mix of two totally different types of material to create the unique feature. But I come back to that. I'm Henrik Alfredsson, so working at Frost Pharma. It's a Nordic specialty pharma company. And we've been working a lot with the pharmacies in the Nordic sector for a long time. And my focus is sustainable solutions. I'm a chemist as a background, so that's why I think these type of products are of high interest. So it actually started up with us working with the pharmacies and having dosing aids. And in my previous job, these were produced in China with, fossil-based oil and transported across the world. And we thought we must be able to make this a smarter way for the climate and, more logic. So we started produce these locally here in Sweden by using bioplastics. So it's a mix of cornstarch and plastic.
Mm-hmm.
And we took away a lot of plastic waste around the product, and we made them recyclable because we took away colors on them and rubber sealings, etc. So a lot better for the climate, and all major pharmacy chains in Sweden are using them today. Syringes, cups, spoons, urine. So that's where it started, and then we also, in the dialogue with the pharmacists, we realized that it's a lot of waste containers that are, given out by the pharmacies. And those were all 100% fossil-based plastic. As you're all aware, all these yellow bins that you see, all the way from tattoo salons up to, the surgery department at the big hospitals. They all use the same, different sizes.
Yeah, definitely. It's like that really loud yellow color that you see at your general practitioner, your doctor's office. You see it at the surgery theater. You see it even in the pharmacy. You'll also see them if you have sharps containers and these kind of things. There's usually a yellow bucket up there for the medicinal waste, right?
Veterinarians using it, and dentists, etc. So only in Sweden, we estimate that there is like 4 million buckets go into combustion every year, just in Sweden. All the, from half a liter up to 50 liters. So it's a huge amount of plastic.
Yeah.
So that's how it started, and from the producer of Mälarplast, who started produce the dosing aids, they also had a dialogue with the Stora Enso. So Stora Enso is one of the biggest forest owners in Europe.
And because they own a lot of forest in Sweden, and Sweden has a lot of forest and a lot of land.
It's a Finnish-Swedish company.
Okay.
Yeah. So they got in contact with their biocomposite department, and we started to try to develop to see if it was possible to mold waste containers in this biocomposite. The nice thing with the story is that this biocomposite is the main component is sawdust, and Stora Enso has a lot of sawdust, and this sawdust is really residual waste. It can't be used for anything else. It's just dumped. You can't even burn it because it's like, flour. So we've been trying now for the last 2 years, and we managed last year to get the production after a number of patents on how to mold them and how to, create the molds and how to fill it and how to design the waste containers. So now we have a series of products from half a liter up to 50 liters. So we cover the main demand. They are all certified according to all the requirements for transportation and safety and sharps, etc. And the end of story is really end of life, because the good thing is that it reduces the CO2 emission by over 50%.
And that is from a life cycle perspective. So if I'm a hospital and I produce hazardous waste that by regulation has to be incinerated for safety purposes, I will be looking at either I take a yellow plastic basket and I put my waste into it, I drive it to the incineration plant and I burn it. That will emit 1 unit of CO2. Alternatively, I could take a sawdust-based bucket, do all of the same things with it, burn it at the incineration plant, and it would only emit around half a unit of CO2.
Exactly.
So it's an end-of-life reduction of around half. That is super cool, and something that I imagine a lot of different organizations out there could actually benefit massively from, ranging from the general practitioners to the dentists or the hospitals, but also the producers that produce medicinal waste as a byproduct of their industrial production processes. When you're looking at it now, Henrik, and you're trying to get into the market, we talked a little bit about this. What do you see as the main challenge in the sustainable transition of the healthcare sector at a global level?
Yeah, I mean, both I see a huge potential and also a little bit of frustration. I think we all saw the latest IPCC reports here regarding the climate change, and it's a little bit frustrating to see that.
It wasn't a jolly read.
No, and what I can see is we actually have the solutions. It's just a matter of starting talking and making plans and looking that we could do and we should do. So my bottom line story is really that the solutions are available, and it's just time to implement and start to deliver together. And WoodSafe is one of them, but it's also recycling of caprons that we have tested. We have Danderyds. I think it's a good first mover here is Danderyds Hospital here in Stockholm, which is our neighbor where I'm sitting. They already started to change to WoodSafe for all the waste containers, and they also started change to recycled caprons. If you just look at it, the three biggest plastic producers in the hospital is actually, number one, gloves, number two, caprons, and number three is the waste containers. So if we just could start to do what we can on those three, we will actually reduce a major reduction in the usage of plastic. So back to your question, since this is a totally new material, to introduce a biocomposite waste container to tenders, because that's where the big usage are getting into the healthcare. We had a lot of discussions. How do you compare yellow, what we call ugly plastic, fossil-based plastic container versus a biocomposite? Do you put a money weight on it, or do you put a CO2 weight on it to compare them? So the way forward has been to actually add a renewable category. So in the tenders, and we see this in most of the upcoming tenders in Sweden, that they have a normal plastic category and they have a renewable category. So then it's up to each hospital and each department to choose. And the hospital and the regions, they have their own goals. They need to reduce the CO2 by X% by year Y.
Yeah.
So then it's up to them to pick. And this is a very hands-on topic to choose, because we can calculate on a kilo. We know exactly if you're using 1,050 liter ones per year, we can calculate on a kilo how many CO2 tons you will save per year. So for a normal hospital in Stockholm, we will reduce the CO2 by 30 to 40 tons per year by just changing from a yellow bin to a brown bin. Everything else the same. It will handle the same way. You would send it away the same way. It will be combusted the same way. You don't have to change anything.
Yeah. So that's a very convincing case. And if you were to look at the price point, how does it compare? Is it a similar price? Is it more expensive, or is it cheaper than the ugly plastic yellow one?
It depends on what kind of tender you're having today. But remember, this is a low cost product.
Yeah.
This is not. So if you compare it to other alternatives you have to reduce the CO2, I would say that this is a very cheap way of reducing your CO2 at your hospital, at your region or clinic.
Yeah.
In the long run, sawdust is not expensive, so we hope to get into volume. But this is a very cost-effective way to reducing your CO2.
And especially if you work with an internal carbon pricing, I suppose that'll easily cover the price difference.
If I just come back to that, is it just to put it in, what do we do today? How do we handle this? The majority of the bins today are produced, especially the bigger ones, are produced in Southern Europe. They are produced by virgin oil. They are transported by truck up to the Nordics or wherever you are. You will drop your waste as the hospitals are trying hard to minimize as much as they can. They are putting these sometimes in a smaller bin, and they are putting these smaller bins in a larger bin, and that larger bin is sent to incineration. And as a fact, we know that the average weight on these bigger bins are around 7 to 8 kilos. So end of story is that over 50%, up to 55% of the waste is the bin. And this doesn't make sense. We are traveling, we are using a lot of oil that we should keep in the ground, and we are, at end of the day, we are burning more bins than waste.
Yeah, for the safety of all.
Yeah.
Which is the key point of it.
It's a stupid way of handling it, I would say. So we must be able to do this in a smarter way. And the solution is already here. And, we are one of them. There are other ways of saving CO2, of course. But if you put this WoodSafe and you put cape rounds, start to recycle those, you find a smarter way to use gloves, there you actually pinpointed the big challenge we have regarding reducing plastic.
Yeah, the single-use plastic, particularly where we do see a relatively big carbon footprint, because there's such a high frequency of use in a hospital setting. I was a little bit intrigued with what you talked about with the patents. Can you walk us through what kind of patents are necessary for rolling out a product like this, and maybe also elaborate, because I think it may not be clear to everyone why you would need one before you start the rollout? So maybe you can paint a picture for us there.
I mean the patents on the
Yeah.
actual product. Yeah. It's just that it's just for us to protect the product, but it's a totally new material, so it behaves different because you can't put this material in a normal mold. And you have to rethink how you design the buckets, because the material is actually harder than plastic, but it's not so flexible. So you need to have these openings and the lids produced in a different way to use the benefit of the material and don't the weaknesses. But end of story, they pass all the tests necessary to transport a material from point A to point B in a safe way, and that's what we're after.
And the point is also that the patent is also helping you protect your costs in research and development in order to develop this product, so that you actually have a chance of making back all of the investment you made in the research and production process. I suppose. But what is actually protected? Is this a design patent that designs a shape and a form, or is it a process patent that protects a way of dealing with material? Or how do you go about protecting something like this?
It's a portfolio of patents, but it's both. How do you protect the mold? How does the mold surface in the mold? How do you fill? Because the material is a bit thicker than the normal PP plastic. So you need to fill it, you need to heat it up, you need to cool it down in different ways, and you need to, and then also it's a smart design of the lid. So it's both the lid and the filling and the production of the actual mold itself.
Mm-hmm. That's super cool.
And it's really we are focusing on especially different products that go into incineration, because that's where the big climate win is.
Yeah, for sure.
So
and I just find this really interesting, because we do work a lot with IP and sort of that intersection where I think there's a notion in some parts of the innovation ecosystem that everything should just be open access and freely distributed. And then the alternative is, of course, that it should be protected, so that there's an incentive to invest in research and development. And I think patents are actually a really interesting lever for green innovation, because it just shows that once you have that system in place, the scaling and the rolling out becomes much more manageable. Whereas if, let's say, you hadn't protected this one, I think it would be more difficult for you to find global distributors that dare take on.
Yeah, that's a good comment, but it's a balance, because you need to have some kind of protection to as you say, to get the investment right to roll out. But in the same way, we are opening up. I don't see any direct competitors right now regarding this type of material, but of course there will be. It's just that Stora Enso's far ahead. They are, from my understanding, the number one when it comes to biocomposite, but there will be other competitors, of course. The good thing for the climate is that we are opening up this market to show other actors out there that this is a very interesting and a possible route forward. And what we are doing, I think one of the good things we have actually created is we are opening up how should a new invention be entered. Let's say a new renewable alternative to other products. Now we've opened up how tenders should look like. So let's say that company X is coming tomorrow with let's say a glove in a recyclable material instead of these nitrile gloves. Now we've opened up, so they could be in a parallel category in the tenders that called renewable or recyclable. They don't have to compete with existing gloves, maybe with price directly. They will have an entry point where they can start to present it and start to make different clinics try to test it, etc. So
And I think that potential is really interesting. The way I understand the Swedish healthcare system is that it's a bit more fragmented than, for instance, the UK and the Danish system, where it's quite centralized. Can you, for those of our listeners that are not familiar with the Swedish healthcare system, can you try and walk us through sort of what is the overall structure and how is the Swedish healthcare system organized in terms of tenders and procurement?
yeah, we're doing a lot of tenders when it comes to pharmaceuticals, but this is separate tender when it comes to commodities like gloves and waste containers. So in Sweden, there are 10 to 15 different tender bodies, units, regions. Sometimes they work together, and sometimes they are by their own, and sometimes they are buying it from wholesalers. Compared to Norway, when it's 4 different regions, Finland 5 different regions. I think in this
Denmark 5.
It's like 4 or 5 as well when it comes to this. But there are good initiatives when it comes to sustainable tenders. There is an initiative where there is an organization where these regions are collaborating when it comes to initiating sustainability in the tenders, and that's actually a brilliant idea that they share good ideas between the regions. And in our case, we are now in tender in, let's say, we're in Stockholm in the tender here, and we can refer to this is how they did it in Stockholm. So now we'll go to Femklöven, another 5 regions to get in there, and you can refer to these tenders. You have to have these early adopters and first movers to
for sure
to develop this.
That makes a lot of sense, and I'm also thinking when you're looking at pharmaceutical companies, for instance, then I know you have some big clients. I don't know if you can name them, but knowing that it's already with one of the other big companies, that usually invokes a lot of calm and confidence that this is a product that exists. We dare make the jump because they made the jump, and that there's a lot of looking over your shoulder at your peers in the industry. So I think it's just really good to sort of get one foot in the door in one organization, and then showing this works. You have all of the certificates that you need, as you said. So you can comfortably buy it, and you can take that CO2 reduction and put it in your books, and it's turning into becoming a no-brainer.
Yeah, but we have this. I'm proud of them, so I don't think they mind either. So we have like AstraZeneca starting using it here in both Sweden and now even in the UK. We have Cytiva, also very keen on the sustainability work. And we have a number of hospitals that we can refer to, Danderyd and Karolinska here in Stockholm, and the biggest pharmacy chain, Apoteket AB, have switched to WoodSafe. And I think we need these early movers, and They want to do good, and they want to look good, and we want to make them look good to push this forward. We need the mavericks, and that was a tough part in the beginning, as all entrepreneurs, to get
I can imagine.
get the foot in.
Yeah. And now you have the mavericks. So
now, if another hospital in Sweden say that it's nothing for us, it can't be done for this and that reason. We have round ones. We are used to square ones, and you have round ones. Okay, but look here at Danderyds Hospital. They've changed, and it worked. Look at the video here, and you can call her or him. Yeah, it's like normal rollout launch.
So how fast do you think you'd be able to roll this out? Let's say that the entire EU wanted to switch in all of the hospitals. Would you be able to meet that demand, or would it take many years of upscaling production in order to meet it?
We have a plan. It is a challenge, but it's a nice challenge, and we already have a plan how to expand this and how to roll it out. We have all the it's no problem with the raw material because it's a lot of sawdust, and it's a matter of scaling up the production units, and we have a plan for that. It's just finding molding sites. They're already identified in the UK, for example, so we can produce it locally. So we will, in that case, transfer the knowledge how to mold it and send the raw material, and I can produce it locally. But there is it is a logic. The energy mix in Sweden it makes all the sense in the world to produce it here. It takes a lot of energy to mold, plastic, and
Makes sense. And
yes.
and the energy mix in Sweden has a lot of nuclear and hydro in it, so it's mostly renewable and nuclear.
It's actually only Iceland that has the better energy mix, and they don't have so much sawdust. So it's
For one reason or another, there's not a lot of sawdust in Iceland. That's
exactly.
very strange.
So it makes sense to produce them in Sweden. It makes more sense to produce this type of buckets in Sweden with sawdust with our energy mix than it is to produce it in Southern Europe and transport it all over the place.
Yeah, that I buy into that point. So I think I have gotten answers to the questions that I had, and I hope that you, dear audience, have also been inspired by this case and by Henrik's knowledge. I know I learned a lot from it, and I've seen an inspirational, practical, pragmatic case that is ready for being rolled out, and that can save CO2 in a cheaper way than the alternatives, probably for a lot of institutions that are currently burning hazardous waste in classic fossil-based glass containers. So, Henrik, thank you so much for being here on the show and telling us about WoodSafe. I really hope the best for you, that you will have a solid rollout and be able to satisfy the demand that I hope will be rising.
Thank you for having me, and feel free to contact me, the woodsafe.green.
Yes, for sure. We will include all of this in the show notes. So if you're interested in learning more about WoodSafe and inquiring about it, there'll be info wherever you're listening in the show notes, and we'll also make sure that you get some attention on LinkedIn to both WoodSafe and Frost Pharma. Thank you so much for being on the show, Henrik.
Thank you very much.
Hello, and thank you so much for listening in to this episode of the Sustainable Healthcare Podcast. It really means the world to us that you're listening in and that you're sharing the podcast as much as you're doing already. We are the top 5% most shared podcast on Spotify, and that is just a tremendous honor that you think the content is so good that you would actually share it with your network. So thanks a lot for that. Please remember that if you subscribe and rate the podcast, it makes it easier for us to get interesting people on board and have them guest the podcast and share their insights with you. So if you would please subscribe and rate the podcast, that would mean the world to us. Also, if you have feedback for us, we're always really, really happy to receive it, to listen to it, and to improve on the show and to improve your experience with the show. So thanks a lot for listening in. Have a great day out there.